Wake up.
When someone challenges you, questions your worth, or accuses you, the common reaction is to defend yourself. We often say things like, "I didn't mean that," or "You misunderstood me," believing this is the noble and reasonable response. However, this act of self-defense, according to Machiavelli, is the precise moment you surrender your power. Machiavelli believed that defending yourself immediately signals weakness, and in the intricate world of power dynamics, how you are perceived is crucial. If others see you flinch, they don't view you as a victim. Instead, they sense vulnerability and an opportunity to dominate. This powerful concept, that the act of defending oneself diminishes one's standing, was understood by Machiavelli long before anyone else. He argued that a person who defends themselves lowers their status, while someone who remains silent compels others to defend them instead. It's important to realize that defending yourself rarely persuades anyone. In fact, it shifts power away from you because by justifying your actions, you're playing on their terms and accepting their right to question you. Once you grant them that authority, they control the narrative. Even if you're in the right, you'll appear guilty, as only the weak feel the need to explain themselves. The truly strong, however, embrace silence, allowing accusations to linger untouched, understanding that the most effective move is to turn the accusation back on the accuser. The goal is to make them doubt themselves, to appear overly emotional, obsessed, bitter, or unstable. The person who speaks first often loses control of the situation, and Machiavelli recognized that whoever controls the narrative controls the outcome. Most people defend themselves because they crave understanding. They mistakenly believe that sufficient explanation, clarification, or repetition will lead to vindication. However, this belief stems from emotional vulnerability, not strategic thinking. Your true aim shouldn't be clarity, but control. Clarity is for personal introspection. Control is for wielding power. Power isn't gained by being understood, but by being respected, feared, and seen as unassailable. Therefore, when someone labels you as arrogant, cold, selfish, or manipulative, and your immediate response is to deny it and explain, "No, you don't understand," you've already lost. By reacting, you show you care, placing the advantage squarely in their hands. In doing so, you surrender your most potent Machiavellian tool, mystery. Consider the most influential individuals you've encountered, not necessarily the loudest or most popular, but those who wielded silence as a weapon. These are the people who could make you second-guess yourself with a mere stare, who remained unflustered under attack. Machiavelli would assert that explaining yourself is a form of submission. Remaining silent, conversely, compels others to speculate, and in their uncertainty, they often overestimate your capabilities. This is the essence of the game. When you choose not to react, your accusers become uncomfortable. They begin to doubt their own words, seeking validation that isn't there. Consequently, their power diminishes as yours grows. You've managed the one thing emotional individuals can't tolerate. You've forced them into self-reflection. This is how you instantaneously flip the power dynamic. You allow their accusation to dissolve into the insignificance of its own weakness. Let's explore this further. Imagine entering a room where someone subtly or directly criticizes you, perhaps a jab at your accomplishments, your demeanor, or your past. Everyone turns to observe your reaction. Your strategic move? Utter silence. No defense, no counterattack, not even a smirk. Just complete, calm stillness. In that moment, you become untouchable. Everyone in the room is compelled to ponder. Why didn't they react? Do they know something we don't? Are they above this? Did that attack actually strengthen them? You've completely shifted the social dynamic. People are no longer focused on the accusation itself, but on your composed response. Silence, when delivered with an impactful presence, conveys far more than any justification ever could. Machiavelli grasped this profoundly. He delved not just into politics, but also into psychology, understanding better than anyone that power isn't derived from what you say, but from what people believe you could say, yet choose to withhold. Now, for the most potent maneuver of all, sometimes you don't just ignore the accusation, you invert it. If someone calls you manipulative, simply smile, look past them, and calmly state, "If that's how you see it." No defensiveness, no apologies, just a cool, neutral detachment. What transpires? They become flustered because they anticipated a confrontation. They hope to see you squirm. Instead, they're left holding their own weapon with no target. At that point, guilt starts to set in for them. They begin to wonder if they overstepped, if they embarrassed themselves, or if they now appear insecure. And indeed, they do. You've effectively taken the negative energy they directed at you and made them bear its weight without expending any effort. There comes a moment when silence becomes unbearable, not for you, but for the one who expected a reaction. That's when the tables turn. They believe they were the accuser, but now they're exposed as someone desperately seeking attention. And you? You've become something far more formidable than merely innocent. You've become untouchable. Machiavelli understood a fundamental truth that most people never grasp. Words are not meant to clarify truth, but often to obscure it. When someone attacks you, whether subtly or directly, they want you to engage in a verbal struggle. They aim to overwhelm you with emotional explanations, because the more you explain, the less confident you appear. Instead, allow them to fill the silence. What happens then? They overplay their hand. They repeat themselves, starting to look desperate, emotional, and unstable. You've said nothing, yet they are now the one being judged. This is because the observers aren't just listening to the words. They're watching who remains composed and who becomes agitated. That's the essence of social power, and it doesn't come from being correct. It comes from being untouchable. Consider a business meeting where someone subtly undermines you, perhaps by saying, "I'm not sure that strategy is really thought through," or "he always has these bold ideas." They are actively seeking a reaction. They want you to take the bait. Most people would lean forward, eager to explain, justify, clarify, and as they do, their nervousness becomes palpable to everyone in the room. However, the Machiavellian operator leans back, waits, and perhaps even offers a slight smirk. If they speak, it's not a defense, but a redirection. "Let's hear your strategy then." Now, the attacker is forced to perform, and the dynamic in the room completely shifts. Suddenly, they are the ones being evaluated and under pressure, because the silence of a confident person is an unspoken accusation. It makes others feel insignificant without you needing to do anything explicit. In romantic or personal relationships, this principle becomes even more impactful. For instance, if your partner says, "You don't care about me anymore," the average person would panic, launching into a flurry of explanations, reassurances, and defenses. In doing so, they validate the emotional premise of the accusation. However, the Machiavellian approach is different. You don't dismiss their feelings, nor do you argue. Instead, you allow the weight of the accusation to simply hang in the air. You simply observe their emotional outburst dissipate into the surrounding quiet. Then, with composure, you calmly state, "That's not how I see it." This concise, firm response, offered without explanation or justification, introduces uncertainty into their mind. They begin to question their own tone and wonder if they reacted too strongly. In that critical moment, you've seized control of the emotional rhythm, which is the ultimate determinant of the situation. Whoever dictates the emotional pace dictates the narrative. There's an even more sophisticated and ruthless strategy. Beyond merely staying calm when accused, you vanish. If someone insults you, do not reply, respond, or even acknowledge them. However, do not block them. Allow your absence to serve as a mirror, forcing them to confront the silence of being ignored. This approach can devastate individuals in two significant ways. First, they realize you didn't even consider them worthy of a response. Second, they begin to construct internal narratives, which often leads to a complete loss of composure. Why? Because most people thrive on emotional validation, even during conflict. When you withdraw that validation, they wither, spiraling into a desperate cycle of posting more, talking to others, and trying to provoke a reaction. With each escalating attempt, they appear weaker, more obsessed, and increasingly unhinged, all while you maintain perfect stillness. This is how you win, not by proving your point, but by letting them self-destruct in their pursuit of a reaction from you. Here's where the strategy becomes truly advanced. Instead of defending yourself when attacked, you turn their accusation into a demonstration of their weakness. If someone calls you arrogant, you might calmly remark, "It's interesting how confidence makes some people so uncomfortable." If they say you're manipulative, you could respond, "Only those who can't be influenced often say that." If they accuse you of being fake, a possible retort is, "People often say that when they're not getting what they want." You're not merely denying the accusation, you're transforming it into evidence of their insecurity. Now, they're the ones scrambling for a defense. This isn't just a reversal. It's a power move akin to a judo throw, using their own emotional force to orchestrate their public downfall. Machiavelli referred to this as the turn of the blade. Instead of meeting a sword with a shield, you allow the attacker to impale themselves on their own weapon. Society teaches you to protect your reputation, to explain yourself, and to clear your name. Yet, Machiavelli recognized the inherent trap in this. He understood that the moment you chase innocence, you implicitly admit guilt. Therefore, the true strategist never engages in this game. Instead, they appear too composed to be rattled, too self-assured to care, and too certain of their position to offer any explanations. Gradually, those who attempt to undermine them begin to appear unstable, overly reactive, jealous, and weak. This is because the more you defend yourself, the more it seems necessary, while the more you ignore, the more dangerous others perceive you to be. That perception is the wellspring of true power. Most people mistakenly believe that power comes from proving yourself. They think it's about proving you're right, proving you're not what others claim, or proving you're superior to their perception. However, Machiavelli would scoff at this notion. For the instant you attempt to prove anything, you've already validated the other person's judgment. And when you grant someone that validation, you effectively hand them control over you. Imagine you're in a group setting, a social gathering, a dinner, or a meeting, and someone publicly makes a snide remark, such as, "You always act like you know everything," or "He's always like this. I guess humility isn't your strong suit." What's the typical reaction? Most people tense up, try to laugh it off, or, worse, offer an explanation to smooth things over, believing they're saving face. However, what they're actually doing is confirming that the jab landed its mark. Now, everyone is observing the defense, which, in itself, makes the initial insult seem credible. The Machiavellian approach, conversely, involves a brief pause, a 2-second silence. Then, you calmly survey the room, not with aggression, but with quiet amusement. Only if necessary, you offer a calm, precise, and dismissive comment. You might say, "You seem emotional today," or "That's an interesting take," or simply maintain a long, unwavering gaze without saying anything at all. The outcome is predictable. The attacker becomes agitated, fidgets, seeks support, and attempts to explain away their remark. They feel the spotlight shifting onto them, because your lack of reaction has communicated something louder than any words could. You are not the one being judged, they are. In the digital realm, these dynamics escalate even more rapidly. Comments, posts, call-outs, direct messages. People constantly try to provoke a reaction from you. Here's a truth Machiavelli would ingrain in your mind. In the court of public opinion, silence implies guilt unless your silence instills fear. Therefore, the effective tactic is this. When attacked online, don't defend or explain. Instead, distort. You don't address the claim directly. You redirect the energy back towards the audience. For example, if someone calls you toxic or manipulative, instead of posting a tearful defense or a lengthy clarification, you post, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you." What has just occurred? You haven't defended yourself. You've reframed the accusation into a symbol of your power. Now, they appear bitter, while you remain unbothered. The audience begins to question who truly holds control. This isn't mere damage control, it's narrative dominance. Let's delve even deeper into the tactical options. Instead of defending yourself, you have 3 powerful tools at your disposal. First, silence. This is the default, cold, and potent, leaving your accusers exposed. Second, deflection. This involves reframing the narrative without directly acknowledging the accusation. Third, precision cuts. These are short, sharp truths that decisively end the exchange. For example, if someone says, "You're full of yourself," you might respond, "Confidence often upsets the insecure." If they say, "You're fake," you could reply, "I don't owe you authenticity." If they claim, "You think you're better than everyone," you might counter, "No, I just don't think like everyone." These are not defenses. They are assertions of your status. They don't say, "I'm not guilty." They declare, "You can't touch me." This is the core principle. The Machiavellian individual never seeks approval or strives to be seen as good. Instead, they dare people to perceive them as bad and walk even taller for it. When you refuse to defend yourself, a peculiar phenomenon occurs with your adversaries. They become unhinged because they anticipated a battle but find themselves swinging at smoke. They escalate their efforts, push harder, and become more dramatic. In doing so, they expose more of their own insecurity. And the more they do this, the more your standing rises in the eyes of others. Why? Because you've orchestrated their self-destruction. This is the Machiavellian endgame. You don't destroy your enemies. You allow their obsession with you to destroy them. You might believe being misunderstood is dangerous. However, being predictable is far worse. The misunderstood person possesses an air of mystery, whereas the predictable person is easily manipulated. Individuals who constantly try to clarify everything are often perceived as desperate. Conversely, those who calmly embrace being misunderstood are feared. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Even more profoundly, it's better to be confusing than predictable, because a confused person is cautious. They observe you. They don't act rashly, and that means you control the playing field. Let's dismantle one final illusion. You don't need a good reputation to succeed. You need a strong one. A person with a good reputation is expected to be faultless, gentle, and agreeable. In contrast, a person with a strong reputation might not always be liked or trusted, but no one dares to casually oppose them. This is the outcome when you consistently refuse to defend yourself. Your reputation ceases to be about what people believe and instead becomes about what they fear you might do next. This is how you seize power, by no longer seeking approval. Instead, you cultivate an aura that inspires caution in others. Even your silence becomes a deliberate act, and every move you don't make is interpreted as a strategic maneuver in their minds. The ultimate evolution of this strategy isn't just silence. It's an aura, a presence so composed, secure, and above trivial skirmishes that accusations simply dissipate before they can even land. This state doesn't come from being emotionless, but from intentionally being unbothered. Once you've trained yourself not to defend, explain, or seek validation, you cross a threshold where your very presence becomes your defense. At this point, power becomes effortless. Consider individuals in life who never explain themselves. They don't post lengthy rants, correct false information, or argue with critics. Yet, people respect them more. Why? Because silence in the face of accusation creates a myth. It invites interpretation, and when the human mind is left without an explanation, it fills that void with assumptions of strength. People begin to assume you must be formidable. They believe you possess knowledge they lack, or that you are so secure in your identity that you remain unfazed by challenges. This assumption is what compels people to follow you. Machiavelli wasn't concerned with being good. He was focused on being in control. And the individual who never defends themselves always controls perception, even when surrounded by falsehoods. Here's the paradox. The more you explain yourself, the more isolated you appear, because no one feels the need to intervene when you're already arguing your own case. However, if you remain calm, silent, and unperturbed, others begin to feel compelled to defend you. They might say, "That was uncalled for, he didn't deserve that." Or, "Why are you still pushing when he hasn't even responded?" Suddenly, they become your shield. And what's more advantageous than defending yourself? Having others do it for you, without even being asked. That's Machiavellian leverage, letting the crowd advocate for you while you remain above the fray. Now, you're not just respected, you're elevated. This doesn't happen instantly. You build it meticulously, like a fortress, brick by brick. You achieve this by exercising restraint, choosing stillness over reaction, and never explaining more than is absolutely necessary. Start by never correcting insults clearly intended to provoke. Let them speak, let their words echo. Your silence communicates that the insult didn't even register with you. Respond to indirect jabs with calm confusion, not offense. Utter, "Is that how you see it?" with complete serenity. This effectively disarms the emotional energy behind their attack. Use brief, conclusive phrases instead of defensive ones, such as noted, okay, think what you like, or time will tell. Each of these phrases closes the door to further debate, ending the interaction. Pay close attention to your facial expressions, body language, and gaze. The Machiavellian individual never twitches, flinches, or tenses up. Stillness is their armor. The more composed you remain while others lose control, the more silently your power expands. When people cannot provoke you, they fear you because you become unpredictable, not erratic, but unreadable. You become a mirror reflecting their own instability back at them. Machiavelli would assert, the most dangerous man is not the one who attacks first. It is the one who never needs to. You will reach a point where attacks cease, not because you fought them off, but because people understand they will lose before they even begin. Your presence declares, I don't play defense. I allow others to destroy themselves in their attempts to reach me. There's a crucial distinction between strength and immunity. Strength may still flinch, react, or become emotional, even if it fights back. Immunity, however, doesn't even acknowledge the hit. That is the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the argument. You end it before it even begins by never needing to answer. Because when you no longer defend yourself, people stop viewing you as someone who needs to be put on trial. You're not on their level. You've transcended the court of public approval, and the only judgment that matters is your own. From this point forward, you don't live in defense. You live in definition. You define your image. You define your tone. You define your silence. And people sense that. They perceive the certainty in your gaze, the calmness in your posture, and the inherent danger in your quietude. You are no longer resisting. You are commanding. And that's when the dynamics of the room shift. The crowd speaks less. Your adversaries grow quieter. Your name carries weight, not because you fought for it, but because you never explained it. Never defending yourself doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking only when it strategically shifts power. When you do say something, it should feel like a calculated move, not a mere reaction. Because every time you refrain from explaining yourself, every time you remain still while the world churns, you become the one thing they cannot control, a person who answers to no one. In a world where noise demands your reaction, your silence can become your greatest weapon. Power doesn't beg to be understood. It lets misunderstanding work in its favor. Remember, those who defend themselves too quickly often reveal more than they protect. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, pause, and let the silence speak your strength. If this opened your eyes to a deeper way of thinking, help our channel grow by liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And let us know in the comments, what other hidden truths would you like us to explore next?